Law, theory, and hypothesis. These are all words that we use to describe parts of the scientific process. Now, oftentimes we run across some confusion about these different things, and I wanted to spend a little time talking about exactly what they are. Sometimes we have this idea that we start with a theory, and then it somehow gains enough momentum and evidence behind it that it graduates to becoming a law. This is a very common idea, but the reality is that doesn't encapsulate what a theory and a law really are. It would be more accurate to say that a theory is a set of ideas that help us understand a concept. Or you could think of it as an explanation. In other words, a theory is why something happens. Well, if that's true, then what's a law? A law, on the other hand, is a description. So let's think about some laws that you might have encountered before, say the law of gravity. Right? The law of gravity is a description that you've probably heard it as what goes up must come down. Maybe a little bit more scientific would be something along the lines of objects in mass attract each other in proportion to their mass, or something like that. It's a description. It says what happens. The explanation of gravity, on the other hand, in other words, how it works, the theory of gravity, that's a different ballgame, and that physicists are still working on. What about in behavioral sciences? You may encounter the idea of the law of effect. Thorndike's law of effect states that behaviors that are rewarded will increase in frequency, and behaviors that are punished will decrease in frequency. In other words, that's a description. That's a law. Now, why that happens, psychologists are still working on. The explanation of how the brain does that, or how what the environmental variables in order to have that happen, those would all be theories about how the law of effect works, or how learning works. The last term I want to talk about is the hypothesis. Okay, if a law is a description and a theory is an explanation, then what's a hypothesis? A hypothesis is a prediction. So imagine that your theory of learning includes an association has to form between some neutral stimulus and some biologically important stimulus. That's classical conditioning. And you think that the association has to happen together in time. Okay? And that's part of your theory. That the neutral stimulus and the important stimulus have to happen together in time and space. Your prediction then might be, if you put them together in time and space, right? Present the two things, like let's say you're presenting a tone and a shock. And if you present them together in time and space, then you will get learning. And if you present them not together in time and space, then you will not get learning. Right? So that would be a prediction or a hypothesis generated from your theory. So, just to recap, a theory is an explanation, a law is a description, and a hypothesis is a prediction. Hopefully this will help clarify how these words are used and what they actually mean as you encounter them.